Hello, Opening Pathways viewers. It's Tom LeNoble. It's great to be with you again. And today I have Hanna Bauer with me. Hanna is joining me, and she's a leadership strategist, and she helps CEOs and aligns people, purpose, and performance. And she's the founder of HEARTnomics, which we're going to learn a little bit about today. But most importantly, we're going to learn some stuff about Hanna, which I'm really excited to do. Hanna, welcome to Opening Pathways.
My goodness, thank you so much for having me, Tom. True pleasure to be here.
I've been looking forward to it. And here we are, and we're going to jump right in. Let's start with the beginning of what HEARTnomics is. What sparked your idea to start it?
Well, the Heartnomics is really an extension of a lot of things that happened internally in me that then became a method, that became a framework, that really became the way that I get to help leaders. And who do I help? The ones that don't just want to do the thing, but they want to do the right thing and want to do the thing right. So how do we do it? With love and excellence. So yes, there's the alignment between being human-centric and having excellence in operational performance.
Love this. I got to know what sparked your idea to do this, and when did you know? What was the moment when you said to yourself, this is my path?
So it's actually interesting because I got this call from Children's Health Care of Atlanta, and it was to do a 20-year reunion of a significant surgery. And it was actually something that I had to try to cover up, like I really didn't talk about the surgery. It's just something that happened, and we just moved forward. Everybody else moved forward, we're all good. I'm alive, things going on. And then when I was in that interview, they took me to the operating room. They took me with the admissions person, the doctor, and then I realized this is really a big deal. So what happened? And it was a 20-year anniversary for an innovative surgery called a heart ablation. And I was actually the first recipient of the surgery. It was done at the time, it was an experimental one. And what did it do? Well, it provided the cure not only for me, but for 3,000 other children at that time. And so what was it? And what everything kind of like the convergence of everything, right? Like you said, the fulcrum point, like what was that? Like that part was that I realized what had to happen for everything to bring me to that moment. And in my journey to getting to this cure, I had gone through a lot of failure, a lot of fear, a lot of crisis, uncertainty, things that I wanted to do that I wasn't able to do. But I also went misdiagnosed for a while, and I realized that was a lot of my passion is, and also greatest fear was that I didn't want to treat the symptoms. I really wanted to treat the root, the heart of the matter. And that's where my entire philosophy started coming together, really from the journey to getting to that cure as a kid, just really survival, to later on, fast forward 20 years later as an entrepreneur, realizing I was still in survival mode, but this time was by my own doing. It was because of what was in my head. And
Yes.
I took a lesson from my kid years to then overcome that.
I have to share something. I love this story. Those of us that have had these kinds of experiences and what I've learned about it, I call them terrible gifts.
Ah, yes.
And what that is we have things happen to us. We lose somebody we love, a relationship ends, we get sick, a pet dies, some disaster happens. And it's nothing we would wish on anybody. But what I've learned, and you are one of those people, that whether it's 5 years, 10 years, or 20 years, there's a gift that comes from it. And it
Yes.
sounds like you got a terrible gift.
I did. I did. And that was the gift of Heartnomics. I realized that from this particular quote, when I heard my doctor say, when they asked him, okay, so what were you thinking? There's this girl, she's dying, like you're trying this out. And he clearly said, we were just trying to keep her alive long enough for technology to catch up.
Yeah.
And I think it was at that moment, everything's like, wow, what was it that kept me alive long enough? And that was their leadership through love and excellence, realizing that there's room for both. I needed both. I needed technology and learning from the mistakes, but I also really needed the love because at the time when there was no cure, no hope, that's the only thing that kept me alive really was love.
You know, it's a lesson in hope and resilience no matter what, because I know I've learned in my own journey that if you can just hang on, something's coming along, and that requires a lot to be able to do it. And how thrilled we are to have you here and celebrate that 20 years and see that beautiful smile of yours. Tell me this.
Yes.
How are you fundamentally different today from when you started HEARTnomics?
Well, okay, so my perspective in life is a bit different, right? I mean, like, in essence, I lived a lot in a bubble growing up. I lived in a hospital. I was in and out. It was more of I didn't have the 5 year plan, the 10 year plan. I had like the day to day, sometimes the hour to hour, and moments where it was minute to minute, just fighting for my next breath. I think a lot of my life was trying to control the uncontrollables. I mean, you can't control the heartbeat, it just happens automatically. You don't think about it. And there were things in there though that I could control, like my breath, and that by controlling, helping my breath go under control, could help in some way. Then diminish perhaps the pain from those things I couldn't control. In this case, my heart. So I realized in how am I fundamentally different is in that continuous lesson, is in understanding that there is a process, that there is a pain. There's a lot of things I don't understand, that I didn't understand. I still, I think at that moment when I saw the interview, it gave me satisfaction and a bit of a closure of like, hey, it wasn't just me, it was for many thousand others. And I'm very blessed to have had that opportunity, because I know we don't all get that opportunity for that. It's everything that we go through, like it's just, it was a rare moment I got to have that. But much more for me is to not forget where I did come from, not forget that, hey, yes, it's okay to one, be aware and admit that there was trauma. And it's okay to know that I was able to grow from it, and not just grow from it, but there is a reason for a crisis. A crisis doesn't destroy you, a crisis reveals you. And in this case, a crisis, in my case, and the way that I see even as entrepreneur, as doing life, is that a crisis really is the opportunity for innovation. And that's what it taught me. It taught me that a critical moment, something that there was no cure, it gave rise to an innovative solution. And I took a lesson from that. I took a lesson in business, in organizations, in nonprofits, and things wherever I served, realizing that our world is constantly changing. We can't stop that. But
Yeah,
there is opportunity in that. And the opportunity is to innovate and build solutions, and knowing that I didn't come up with a cure for me on my own. It took a team. It took my parents, my grandmother, my doctors, and it hasn't changed. We need
yeah,
community. We need teams. We need
we do.
people.
Especially now, right? We do.
Yes.
Community is so important. Community and unity. So much noise going on out there in the world. And I don't know about you, but I'm a believer there's far more of us looking for community and unity than
Yes.
participating in the noise. So tell me
100%.
this. I'm curious. Um,
Mhm.
what I find is, and I love asking this question, is there's usually someone early in life that has an impact on who we
Mhm.
become.
Yes.
And who was that for you?
Oh, without that, my grandma. My grandma, and I tell you why, is because um now I have 5 children. As soon as something happens to them, immediately, like sometimes I shut down. Like I want to help them, and like I don't know how to help, and then just anything that hurts them hurts me. And I'll say my grandmother had to be very, very strong, because she saw me as a kid not being able to breathe and really not having a medicine or something to give me. But yet she was courageous enough to jump in the crisis with me. And she jumped in it with me by holding my hand. She jumped in it with me by showing me how to breathe. I would say she was my first coach in
I
that
love
time.
that.
Yeah, she was my first coach in a time she jumped in where I think sometimes it's easy to like, hey, let me let the professionals handle it. Let me somebody else handle it. She jumped in there with me in the crisis and coached me through breathing, coached me through more than that. Like those moments where it wasn't a critical moment, she would talk with me. She would play with me. She would do things to bring normalcy to me. And that was just as important too.
Wow. You know, my person was my grandmother too. I love that
Yes.
it was my grandmother, and I remember her being very young and My grandfather was much older than she and had died. And I used to go spend the weekends with her, and we would go get root beer floats. And I would
Mm.
hang with her for the weekend. And she was such a special woman, and she taught me so much. And I love your idea that she was the first coach. I like that. That's a great thing. Tell me this. What values have guided you from the start, and maybe which one has deepened over time?
Yeah, well, I think just the concept that values really do dictate life. And I think we take that for granted, like, just like what hope is or love is or integrity, which is they're words that we throw around, but they're not just words, they're not just names, they're really values, meaning they tell us how to live our life, how what we align with in values. This is how I make my decisions, this is how I align with other people. So even just understanding that, that was, I would say, a journey when I started seeing leaders, the leaders that were able to sustain, the leaders that were resilient, the leaders that were really able to make that impact. I saw the pattern was that they were also leaders that led by values, not just whatever was thrown at them and trying to problem solve, but the values really led and told them what they needed to be involved with, how they needed to respond to the situation. So for me, that really changed in the way I looked at, oh, these are just aspirational things. They're not aspirational virtues. They're really ways to live by. And I saw that from my hospital bed. But I believe learning that values have a place in my everyday life, not something I someday will be like this, because we can get very aspirational. But really, I can live out my values today, and every day I get to learn from that. And I lay align with people that share those same values. That was a fundamental lesson that everything built from for me.
Wow, I love this. So I'm curious, Hannah, where has life asked you to slow down recently? And what did you hear when it asked you to slow down?
So I have 5 children. And the with my kids, they all like the beginning that my first four were very close, 17 months apart. And at the same time that they're 17 months apart, again, one of the things that came with the heart disease was always catching up. I even got this called this catch up, like literally the tomato ketchup award from a teacher because I was always catching up. So I lived once I had my, hey, the normal card, I was going pedal to the metal, right? Like, 'cause I had to catch up. So can't quite do that with pregnancy and raising kids and all the fun things that come along with that. And I was still, putting all this extra pressure on just trying to catch up, making sure I was doing all the mom thing. And I was also doing all the entrepreneur things. And I was doing all the community service things. And it did catch up with me. It caught up with me actually at that same interview. Like when I realized that. So I realized that yet again, although I wasn't trying to catch up now in a different stage where they're at recently, is as they've grown, my role as a mom has changed to where it's not physically demanding like that, but they going from that emotional demand as a friend. So even I had to slow down and pause.
A busy household you have going.
Yeah, yeah, they're growing now.
Yeah, I
I
bet
still have a 5-year-old.
I bet they are. When I hear people with that many kids, I think to myself, there must be utter chaos at times and
Yes.
wonderful moments. And then I keep thinking, well, later in life, all this pays off because they'll all be there to take care of it, right? So,
Yeah, we would hope.
well, anyway, right?
That's the hope.
So tell me this, I'd love to know about a risky decision that you made that paid off and what gave you the courage to act on it.
Okay, so that was actually in moving away from what I was doing with publishing to doing what I'm doing now. And it was a risky decision in the sense that I didn't have the full support. I think it's things that where you know what's going to happen when you make the decision. So you kind of avoid the decision for a bit to see maybe people will change their minds. And they didn't. So I still knew that although other people didn't change their minds about what their opinions were, I also didn't change my mind. I was very well much committed to what I knew my calling was and helping other people. I love equipping people. I love what I do. I love leadership. I love to be able to help other people launch and be able to help them be resilient and sustainable. And that meant for me really cutting the what I was everything that I was doing, selling my business, even at a time where it was not the opportune time, and taking on the fullness of what everything entrepreneurship came with the uncertainty of not having that payment coming in or that support necessarily around, and having my 4 kids, having to support them, and the entirety of what comes with that, and taking a risk in really the message I knew was brewing in me, which has developed so much more ever since I've done that. So how has it paid off? I believe in the fulfillment. It's something that I learned again as a kid, and I learned that from my doctors because they just weren't interested in keeping me alive, which was of course priority. But the other part they started introducing me to was quality of life. So when I started hearing the word quality of life, and I started hearing even other leaders talk about the quality of life, I realized that there was yet a quality of life I wanted that could only be fulfilled and being fulfilled. And in order for me to have that fulfillment, I needed to be true to the message and what I believe my role was. Because at the end of the day, I was the one accountable for it. Nobody else was. I
Yeah.
was.
Yes. I love this taking ownership when we're the ones that get to make it happen
Mhm.
or not make it happen, right? So tell me
And it's right
this.
there.
How does Hannah decide when to pivot or push through?
Oh, that's a good one. I think that is so key. One, first of all, is goes back to the values, right? And I've become, of course, this is something I talk about. So for me now, it's a lot easier than what it was at the beginning. Of course, there's times when it feels foggy, but I've come to learn that not every time I'm scared of something do I need to stay away from it. On the contrary, that's good. It's my friend. It's my way of surviving, right? It's me telling me like, hey, watch out. It doesn't mean I need to stop. It just means I need to be better prepared. What would help me be better prepared? And for me, also is looking at the risks. As being young, there was a lot of things that as soon as something happened with my heart, immediately I would respond and kind of freeze, right? Because it's like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? I don't know if it's going to be like a few minutes or a long time, or, this could be just a flutter or a heart attack. So, as I'm making decisions now, is I've taken it to where, okay, what is the worst thing that can happen?
Mm.
And am I okay with that worst thing that can happen? Is this like a heart attack risk? Or is this a flutter? Or, what you feel when you go on a treadmill anyways, it's going to feel uncomfortable. So, what is the level of risk really? And is this a risk as in I'm getting healthier? Or is this a risk and I just for the sake of it?
Yes.
So for me, that's taking a minute to look at the risks and really seeing it in the alignment aspect. Now that does it go with my purpose? Is this something where I need to put it all? In which I have. I mean, I consistently do as an entrepreneur. We do that a lot. We do that in investing in ourselves. Should I invest in this opportunity right now, or is this something that needs to wait? Not only is this a good opportunity, is this the right time for me to do it in? So I've learned to not only take the risks, but also understand the time and also look at the season. There's certain things I can do now that I wasn't able to do in the past. So although my desire was just as there because of my kids, I did put a slow down. So I did go back because I knew for me the priority was to be there as much as I could for the times that it mattered. And in order
Wow.
for me to know when it mattered, I had to know them well enough and talk to them so that I knew when it mattered so I could be there. And I've continued to do that. I know I can't be there 100% of the time with everything, but I do need to be there 100% at the right time. And I need
Yes.
to understand what the right time is. And that's where I spend a lot of time. It's like, what is the right one? So I can be fully committed.
Yeah, Hannah's sharing a lot of wisdom with us. You might want to back this up, viewers, a few minutes and watch and listen to that part over again. Tell me this. I'm interested. I have had in my career, certainly even in my life, where some of my biggest mistakes led to
Hmm.
my big successes. Have you had
Yeah,
one of those?
yeah, a bunch. That's why I get to do what I do because I made a lot of messes, definitely a lot of mistakes. I think entrepreneur wise, I that's where the whole love and excellence came. As I mentioned, I was being burned out, and I was burned out by my own doing. It wasn't a heart disease. It was the consistent lack of awareness of really the humanity, first of all my own, and the humanity of the people I did the work with. So that I learned that lesson when one of my key employees gave me a resignation letter, and I came to learn that it wasn't even for a better job or better pay. It was something that paid less, just had less stress. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's when my mentor's quote came to life. People don't leave organizations, people leave people. And I have become those people that people were leaving. So that was a definite for me, like, oh my goodness. And it made no sense, right? I mean, being somebody who was a heart patient, it's all about heart, and you think heart, and it's like all these things that happy things that come with it, and come to be, in a sense, being that callous or be perceived as a cold manager leader that was not in touch with that. That was one of the hardest things for me that I changed.
So, what I'd love to know next is I'd like to know what impact you're most proud of, not professionally, not publicly, but personally.
Mm. Okay, so I didn't realize that there was good things to moving forward, but there's also things that in moving forward I had not dealt with. And that's where I started learning all about, more than the neuroscience aspect, the detoxing your mind. And I didn't, I had heard about detoxing your body, being obviously going through so many medications and all this stuff, it was like a constant issue. But I had not really grasped or grabbed at the thought of like my mind could also be toxic. And therefore, if my mind is toxic, well, that means I'm toxic. So it's not just like the things that come up. A lot of things that I thought were like, well, or it's just part of who I was. It wasn't me. It was really this toxicity that had become part of my brain. I can actually do with my brain what I've known to do with my body, detoxing. And I did that with neurocycles. And I actually, for me, I would say COVID, although it was a very hard season for a lot of people, it really was hard for me. I would say it gave me enough of that pause to be able to go back and start looking at really the root problems of so much of my mind, and it's something I continue to do it as an exercise. And I feel like that's it brought so much more happiness to understand where these thoughts were coming from, and even the fears. And it's not because they were not unwarranted, they were just things I had not dealt with. You get stuck in the busyness of life and just they're like, oh, we can deal with that later. Nope, yeah, that happened. Let's move forward. you know, and sometimes that positivity can become really a mask for not dealing with things. So understanding that, yes, it's good to be positive, but it's also good to be able to look. And one of the first things as a leader, you're able to talk about the reality. And sometimes reality can be brutal, and it's
Yes.
okay. It's okay. So that for me actually was a big step to look at reality, and not get caught in the negativity aspect of it, but really start dealing with it and making it a practice that I was able to carry it on, not just for me, but with my husband, with my kids. And it took a while. It was a progress. It was a lot of process.
Yes.
But it's one that I'm so happy I embarked in.
Yeah, you can see when you look at you, the growth and what you bring through these experiences and where you become, Hannah. It's very evident. You see it shine through. Tell me this, what boundary has become essential to your sustainability?
My time in the mornings. I didn't respect that again because as a mom, everybody else is important, right? And I even thought as a leader, as a servant leader, oh yeah, everybody comes first. I think there's even something where like, hey, you get last, and that's not sustainable because you cannot give what you don't have. So for me, I had to become, in a sense, protective of that time, knowing every time I didn't have that time, I was off the rest of the day. And I thought it was just like, oh, I just need to have better self-control. I just need to, like, just make sure I just need to hammer on down, and we're gonna do this. We're gonna do this day. It realized if I just took the time and honored the time I had already said, I already identified that would help me, I wouldn't have to spend so much energy the rest of the day trying to get back to what I was losing. So
Yeah.
it has become very much a part of me in the morning to get back with my breath. Just like I learned with my grandmother. Now, like, hey, it helped me when I wasn't well. It definitely helps me when I'm well. So
Ma-
continue doing it, things like that, right? So getting back in a breath, I believe in prayer, I believe in God. So getting in touch with him, getting in alignment, it's straight with him, and having that time where I'm not the only one doing the talking. I let him do the talking. I read scriptures. I go and I practice gratitude, because not just something cute to do, is because I'm really grateful. And I realize, because of so much that I've done, a lot of my problem wasn't that I needed anything. It's just I need to be grateful for what I had. So I learned my lesson in that. So having that moment, but just whatever it might take. And then I also realized it didn't have to be routine, because sometimes it looks different. Sometimes it looked like me sitting outside touching the rocks. Sometimes it looked like me being in my office and just spending some time with some of the things even that I had to do, some of my writings. So it looked different, and even opening up to, like, hey, even that time, that moment that I had, I don't have to have this is what I'm doing here, the routine, but being open to honor that time and flow with it, with what will come, but honoring those moments.
Yeah, I love this idea of carving out time for ourselves. And I know my gratitude practice brings me so much. And as I develop it, I think you probably share this too. There's even room for being grateful for things that don't go well, because they can bring something very, very special if we're open to it. Tell me this, Hannah, what have you learned about trust on this journey?
Okay, so I would say at the beginning, like, as a kid and everything else, there was a lot of things I didn't understand in my illness, right? That required trust, not necessarily because I gave it, but because there was really no option. And I think that became a scary place for me. So I had I would say, unhealthy relationship with both uncertainty and trust. And you definitely need trust during uncertainty. So we were not, in a sense, uncertainty and I became friends, and trust became also a way to get through that. But I did not quite know where to apply this amazing power of trust and apply it well. So realizing that if we don't have trust in relationships, we don't have anything. But I also had to learn that trust is something that we develop. And not only because I'm giving the trust, but I myself am a leader and owner enough to be able to develop my own trust, but first starting with my own self-efficacy. And again, going back to not being able to give what I don't have, I remember all the time the giving, right? The trust. But in reality, I wasn't doing anything to make deposits in my own trust account. I wasn't making deposits in who I believe Hannah was, or, who I believe what Hannah can do. I was believing for everybody else. And I was at the exchange of depleting myself. So I would say I valued what trust gave, but I didn't value what trust could do for me. And that change really, when I realized that, and this was back on my neurocycles and looking at me, it's like I had to gain again the trust in who I was and who Hannah is today, still with all the messes, the mistakes, the questions, all the stuff. I can still trust. There are things that were in me that I knew that I wouldn't trust anybody else. Like, yeah, hands down. Like, yeah, we got this. Put me in, coach, right? So being like that, and also realizing that trust is also something I could leverage, because those things where I felt like I felt short in, that's what people are for. That's why there's a trust in. Really, that trust enabled me to leverage other people's strengths because as I relied in other strengths, then that made me stronger as well. But that was something that I learned, and it was something that had to be developed, and also through a lot of failure, starting with the way that I trusted myself.
I'd love for you to tell me just a little bit about your thoughts on leadership. There's
Mm.
so many books written about being a leader. There's so many styles about being a leader. There's so much out there. What is your message about being a leader?
So the first time I was exposed to leadership was leadership as a servant leader. And that definitely like, hey, I can do that. I can serve. So that I definitely love that definition for leadership. But then I also heard this other definition of leadership, which is by my mentor, leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less, and everything rises and falls on leadership, which I absolutely love. Absolutely. But also, I got to go back to what I even heard my doctor, and really, it's taken decades to understand when he said about keeping her alive long enough for technology to catch up. And I really do believe that that's a big part of leadership is the love that we give as leaders to be able to allow our people to get to the breakthrough that they need. And really, is that love that sustains. So I think for me, if I say the leadership starts with love, that passionate, costly love, but that also is, in a sense, almost ruthless to getting nothing less than excellence. But that's because I know excellence really is an expression of that immense, passionate love I have for you. And I know that they both can live. So it's love that will sustain no matter what. And it's also the excellence, which comes with all its failures, all the things, all the
Yeah,
messiness. Be perfect, not at all. But the excellence that comes in to be able to live out this love and live it out together.
amazing. Wonderful. Tell me this, what's the boldest vision for Hannah coming? What's coming? What's the big vision ahead?
Well, the Breathe leadership operational system, I call it my leadership OS. Just how you know there's an OS for everything. So that I have a leadership OS. So my big vision is I want to give respite to leaders and organizations. Um, just the same way that my grandmother gave to me. And I believe that's possible through both the operational excellence, no, in no way having less standards because I want my people to be well, but also that love, that human centric, where we're allowing the entireness of our humanity to be able to come together with that operational excellence. So my big, very audacious goal is I want to see the Breathe HEARTnomics leadership OS operating system in over 1 million organizations that are working so that both people that are doing the work and the work that they're doing not only are able to bring about the vision and the purpose that they see, but it changes the very being of who they are with their families, with their communities, with really the world. Because when we are well aligned as leaders and we're able to align together in a vision, in a common mission, we really do make the world a better place. I carry the scars of innovation. I know what coming together can do.
Yeah,
It not changed my life, but it changed many others.
love this. What does legacy mean to you at this point in life?
Something that outlives me. It's something that keeps going. That is the transfer of ownership, where it's no longer mine, but really it is the gift that we give, and like a gift that keeps on giving, right?
Yeah, yeah, love this. Tell me this. If a very, very young Hannah was watching this podcast we're creating, what would you tell her?
Well, continue breathing, uh, continue smiling, and hang on because there are many scary moments. There are many painful moments. And I would say, like many people, right? It's going to be worth it. You're going to be okay. And even though things will look messy, and they will, even though things will look like they're impossible, which they were, we still made it. And
Mm,
we thrived. We didn't just survive. Survival's not the goal, but thriving is.
Beautiful. Tell me this. If you had one invitation to leave our listeners with today, what would that be?
To take the moment to align with your purpose. When you align with your purpose, things become so much clearer, especially in a world that's telling you everything that you have or you have to be and all this noise. It's hard to get rid of the noise when you don't know, when you're not aligning with who you are. But once that alignment happens, clarity does come in with the things that you can get rid of. It takes as much, if not more, discipline to get rid of things than it is to acquire things. So in a world that tells you, you need this, you need that, you need this, I say no. Say, what do we need to get rid of? So that you'll be in that light, you be that lean and are able to adapt to change and are able to seize opportunities by being agile with what you do. So aligning is the key for that.
Hanna, thank you so much. You've shared so much wisdom with us today. Hanna Bauer, who is a leadership strategist, the founder of HEARTnomics. Tell us how we can find you.
Well, my website is probably the easiest place. I'm sure you'll put the handle in there, but heartnomics.com. And if you're on LinkedIn, I'm very active in there. So shoot me a message under Hanna Bauer. And that's I usually answer there pretty quickly. So either one of those places will be awesome.
Wonderful. Hanna Bauer, thank you for being on Opening Pathways today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And to my viewers, this is Tom LeNoble. I'll see you next time.